Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. Thanks for joining us. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk, our after hours edition, where on every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, we gather where we have a conversation live. And we obviously try to take your questions, talk about the cases of the day. And then immediately following this, we will do our Patreon show. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, now would be a good time to become a Patreon member. On top of all the cool stuff that you get when you become a Patreon member, you know, you get to get the secret link for the Patreon show, where you also get the secret phone number so you can call in and we can actually have a conversation as it relates to everything that we've been talking about. So first, I feel like I've been doing this a lot lately. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we didn't do a show on a Friday. We didn't do a show on a Monday because of travel commitments. Yesterday, I was in court all day. Literally did not have time or a place where I could have done a show, and pretty much worked out same thing today. Was off sitting, let's just say, what do they call? Oh yeah, it's called a proffer. That's where you go sit with your client. Usually a couple of federal agents show up, a couple of United States attorneys, and everybody chats about things. Of course, sometimes when you think they're not going to go all day, and sometimes they do, or at least most of the day. So I've said this once and I will say it again. If you'd like to see more of us, please subscribe, share with your friends. You know the drill, Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment. And remember, you can listen to us all the time on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now you say, why is that important? What is this Scott guy? Well, Scott would have more time to do crime talk if Scott didn't have to do his lawyer job. Now I understand the lawyer job is hopefully what you think, hey, this is why I want to listen to Scott, because Scott knows what he's talking about. Scott's been doing criminal defense for 27 years. We should listen to Scott. Scott's usually a pretty good predictor of what the courts are going to do. Like to think so. We usually get it right. There's obviously every now and then we strike out. And I'm going to make a prediction on the Lori Vallow matter tonight. And I hope that I'm wrong. Okay. This is a case where I hope that I am wrong, but we'll get to that in a moment. So anyway, just been busy. This work stuff, I hate to say it, but it's kind of back in the whole swing of things. And, the judges aren't really letting you use the old WebEx so you can appear remotely anymore. So now it's back to the, let's do a, 3-hour trip in the car each way so that the judge can have you there. Complete waste of time. But that's what you got to do. Clients want you there. You got to do it. They're paying the bill, right? You got to do what you got to do. So that's where we are. All right. So I apologize. We're going to get back on track. I'm not going to say that I'm going to neglect clients. I'm just going to be more efficient in getting my crime talk work done so that I can do both. We'll figure something out. At some point, something has to give. But I need probably, so I can quit my day job, I think I need 1 million subscribers. So I can only subscribe once. You all can tell your friends to do it over and over again. All right. Let's start talking about some of the news of the day that we didn't really get to talk about yesterday. But I think this was kind of a good one. Remember that Sherri Papini lady? She was arrested for kind of the whole Gone Girl type of situation where she disappeared herself to be with her boyfriend, and everybody thought that, it's just too bad. But she, of course, what she do, she lied about it. She didn't just go off and, disappear and say, oh, I don't know what happened. Or she tells everybody, hey, I'm having an affair. No, she didn't do that. She lied about it, made up a story saying that she was basically kidnapped. Other bad things happened to her. You can only imagine. We're going to try to keep this G-friendly tonight. Anyway, the sentencing for her was on Monday. She was, the prosecutor was asking for 8 months. She came back based upon the recommendation for the federal sentencing guidelines of 30 days, 1 month in jail. The judge was like, oh, no, Miss Papini. No, we're not going to do that because you're still lying about it. You were lying about it up until the date that you got caught. And oh, by the way, you swindled people out of $300,000 by telling people that you had been kidnapped, received the public benefit, the aid from the victim assistance. Well, guess what? The judge said, oh, we're not doing that. Bam! 18 months in prison. 18 months, a year and a half, ladies and gentlemen. That seems reasonable. And the judge that did this was a judge by the name of William Shubb, S-H-U-B-B. I say my hat's off to the judge because lots of judges really do what the prosecutors want them to do. And the judge said, no, I'm not doing that. Like I said, the prosecutors only wanted 8 months. Needless to say, the defense was agreeing with the probation department's recommendation of 30 days in jail. And, I'm sure the attorney's like, oh, yeah, I understand the government wants 8 months. We're asking for 1. The judge will split the baby. You'll probably get 4 or 5 months, maybe a combination with in-home detention, right? Yeah, no, 18 months in prison. And then on top of that, she gets out to do 36 months of supervised release, which is the fancy federal word for parole. Okay. Remember, when you go to prison, you get out on parole. If you do maybe some jail as a condition of probation, then it's called probation, but it's supervised release is the federal word there. Anyway, like I said, she had pled guilty to faking her own kidnapping and then lying to the FBI about it. And it took years for this to come out. And, basically, what can I say? She's saying she's out for a jog. The married mom of 2 returned weeks later, almost hundreds of miles away, acting dazed, battered, and bruised, and insisted that she was held captive for 22 days by 2 Latina women. Investigators began to uncover her past leading up to her disappearance, including the involvement of her ex-lover, according to prosecutors, and said that she was convinced others that she was a victim of this violence. Yeah, not so good day. Now, another judge that we need to talk about, the judge in the Nicholas Cruz trial, okay? Should we really say sentencing phase? He pled guilty to killing everybody down there at the high school that he was attending. And there was kind of a blow up last week. I don't know. Do we have that video handy, Frank? I can't remember if we got that video. Take a listen to this judge. She goes a little over the top, but go ahead and roll the tape.
Your Honor?
Yes.
At this time, the defense rests, other than putting in our records.
We're not playing chess. I mean, will you please take the jury back in? Thank you. All right, go ahead and put in your records.
2B, Nicholas Cruz Henderson, episode 1 record.
Let me just stop. State, are you going to have anything ready for today?
No.
We're
last told us
accepting,
there was 80 witnesses. we're waiting for 40 more witnesses.
I just want to say this is the most uncalled for, unprofessional way to try a case. You all knew about this, and even if you didn't make your decision till this morning, to have 22 people plus all of this staff and every attorney march into court, be waiting as if it's some kind of game. Now I have to send them home. The state's not ready. They're not going to have a witness ready. We have another day wasted. I honestly, I have never experienced a level of unprofessionalism in my career. It's unbelievable.
So, Judge, if we had any pretrial matters, you asked us to be here at 9:15. We were here at 9:15 to discuss pretrial matters. I have been practicing in this county for 22 years.
You know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear
Well, Judge, you're insulting me on the record in front of my client, and I believe that I should be able to
Okay,
defend
you
myself.
can do that later. You can make your record later, but you've been insulting me the entire trial. So, blatantly. taking your headphones off, arguing with me, storming out, coming late intentionally if you don't like my rulings. So quite frankly, this has been long overdue. So please be seated. You can receive the evidence. I will receive the evidence. And then you can put whatever you want on the record at the end.
So the judge kind of lost her stuff. Now, I've seen a heck of a lot worse. It's not that big a deal. Frankly, the judge jousting a little bit with the defense attorney. And I'm going to have to side with the defense attorney in this case. Okay, everybody puts on their witness list everybody they think they're going to call. For whatever reason, the defense said, you know what, we're not going to call any witnesses. Now, as a matter of professional courtesy, could you have said, yes, we're going to rest? Okay. What's the big problem, Judge? Normally, these type of situations come up when the prosecutors run out of witnesses, or you seat the jury and the judge says, call your first witness, Mr. or Miss Prosecutor. And everybody's sitting there twiddling their thumbs. And the prosecutor's like, oh, we didn't think we were going to sit a jury this fast. We don't have a witness to start. And then you just sit there and like, okay, we'll start again tomorrow. So normally it's the prosecution that gets scolded for doing something like that. I get it. It's an inconvenience to the jury. That's really what the judges are more concerned about than anything. Let's face it. They're there all day. What does it matter whether they're hearing witnesses or not? They're still going to get their paycheck, right? It's the jurors who aren't getting paid for this, other than maybe their $5 a day or $50 a day that they get, depending on the jurisdiction they're in. It's an inconvenience to them, but hey, if we're not going to start for another 2 weeks, why does it take the prosecution almost 2 weeks to get their witnesses together? And the prosecution has to always be ready for a case in rebuttal in anticipation that the defense is going to rest. Okay. Sometimes you can judge from how things are going. The court will call you up and say, hey there, Mr. Reich, how many witnesses do you think you're going to have? We may have one, maybe one. Okay. So we'll be ready to go. And you tell the court, but you're under no obligation to do so. But for the judge to sit there and say, oh, you don't like my rulings. Oh, really, Judge? Because I'm supposed to sit here and smile every time you make a terrible ruling against my client. The defense attorney in this case, she filed a motion to recuse the judge. And as soon as I saw that the motion to recuse was filed, save your breath. I hope they didn't spend too much time on that. It will be denied. Short of a life without parole sentence, this will be appealed to a higher court. Is that enough to result in an unfair trial that the judge, as a defense attorney, sometimes you just get used to the judge ruling against you, because your motions issues, you may think, oh man, this is a great motion to suppress. We should win this thing 10 times over. But if you have a crappy judge who, frankly, maybe he's not that smart, not that well-versed on the law, always does what the prosecutors want to do anyway, your motions issue is only as good as the judge that it's in front of. If you have an intellectually honest judge who sits there and says, yeah, the police screwed up, motion to suppress granted, boom, you're golden, right? But it's only as good as the judge that you're in front of. I've seen a lot worse. I've had a lot worse in front of a jury. Okay. And frankly, I think it works wonderfully. It works to the benefit of the defense. Okay. Because if the judge is relaying to the world that they don't like you, sometimes that helps. Let me give you an example. Okay. Years ago, had this trial. It was a simple little trial. It was a drug case. The defense wasn't my guy. He wasn't my guy. We even had another guy that came in under oath and said, I understand I have Fifth Amendment issues, but I'm going to testify because I can't let an innocent man go to prison because they were my drugs. I was the one out there selling the drugs. This is my hoodie. This is, he had it. It was great. The judge hated my client, and the judge by the end of the trial, hated me. And so it was a pretty hard fought battle for sure. In this trial, they tried to keep our witness off the stand. The confidential informant that came in to testify that my client was the person that purchased the drugs, let's just say he had a checkered past. Okay. He had a list of felony convictions for drug offenses a mile long. He had a bunch of other misdemeanors involving crimes of moral turpitude that are ripe for cross-examination. Okay. And so I had them all ready to go. I had all these misdemeanors. It was like shoplifting stuff, right? But if you're going to shoplift, you petty little thief, why should we trust you in matters of great importance of this trial, right? So we're there, and I'm cross-examining. And isn't it true you pled guilty to this? Boom, boom. And the prosecutor finally object. And the judge, I thought was going to jump over the bench at one point. It's like, Mr. Reich, enough, sustained. And he points to me and he says, the jury will disregard Mr. Reich's statements. He is trying to besmirch this man's character. And I think I said, I looked at the jury and I said, yes, I am. And the judge didn't, it was smart ass of me. It was sarcastic. I shouldn't have done it, but the judge was just being such a jerk to me. Right. And so we go back, the jury deliberates. We rest, the jury goes back and deliberates. And I remember it was cold because it got dark really early, and the jury came back, and it was, late. It was probably after 5:00, which, they used to be able to do, but now with budgets, they can't do that. No one can work late anymore. So whatever. And as we're sitting there, and, they come back, they read the verdict, and I could see the judge is literally gritting his teeth as he's reading the words "not guilty" like 2 or 3 times. And my client's there, and a couple of the jurors walk by on their way out of the courtroom before the judge, does something, says his final words to us. And one of the ladies walks up behind him and says, "We weren't going to let him get you." Referring to either the prosecution or the judge. The judge was the one that I think helped my client, because he came across as so biased that he clearly wasn't being fair and impartial, right? That's what a judge is supposed to do, call balls and strikes, not have some skin in the game, so to speak. And he clearly had a skin in the game, hated my client, just wanted to throw him off to prison. And, and that was it. And, always brings me, great pleasure when they don't like your client. And they said, all right, let the judgment of acquittal enter. And, oh, Your Honor, excuse me. Can we get a bond release, please? Because, he's not going to prison tomorrow. Like, just screw you, judge. Like, why do you have to be a jerk? But that's the way they get sometimes. Not all judges. There's some really great judges out there that give you a fair trial. And if you're going to lose, if you lose, they're going to launch your client. So this did not take place in front of the jury, thank goodness. Then perhaps it could have been a situation whereby, it could be prejudice, seen on appeal as prejudicial. Now, if the judge's rulings, and don't get me wrong, what can you expect? I've had clients that have got upset over the years. Like, man, the judge denied every motion we filed, denied, sustained every, or overruled every objection you made in trial, Scott. Like, man, this judge she's biased against you. I'm like, well, we've got some bad facts. The law is really not on our side. But guess what? At the end of the day, we still ultimately won. Okay. You can't make any promises or guarantees, but I've literally won trials where they've denied every motion that I've ever filed, overruled every objection I ever make, and we still win. Okay. And just like the little example I gave, when the judges start, it just looks like they're just being not fair. The juries pick up on that. And let's face it, most people kind of sway to the underdog, unless the judges are doing their job, giving both sides a fair trial. But if it comes across that they're not being fair to everybody. That's it. And if a judge can't deal with, somebody taking off their headphones or, whatever, part of that is respect for the judge, right? If you have respect for a judge, I always call the judges I respect. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. If it's a judge I don't particularly respect, yes, Judge. Yes, Judge. And sometimes that's on the judge as well. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you have to reflect upon yourself and say, hey, maybe it's me, right? Maybe the judge has to do that a little bit as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. Needless to say, the judge denied Mr. Cruz's motion to dismiss, and even though she said it was the most unprofessional thing she'd ever seen, it's just one of those deals where you have to kind of get over it. There's judges you like, there's judges you don't, there's judges that hold your feet to the fire. It is what it is. It's called the practice of law. But when you do it and all of a sudden it doesn't exactly instill trust and confidence in your client, where the client starts questioning, I don't think she's going to give me a fair trial. What is there to say? It's a question of fact for the jury to decide. Does he live or does he not? It's not up to the judge. So her decisions will be subject to appellate review, assuming he gets the death penalty. We'll have to wait and see. But the defense rested after they had 44 witnesses left to go. That's what the prosecution was complaining about, was that they had 44 witnesses to go. We weren't prepared to do this. Okay, move it up. Instead of saying, we'll come back in 2 weeks, why don't Mr. Prosecutor, get your witnesses here. Do what you got to do. I'm pretty sure, right, the jury has seen the evidence that's come in for aggravation. They've seen the crime scene, which they would have, they would be able to see to make their determination. The defense's theory was simple, that he was basically, Nicholas Cruz was an abused kid by his mother who used drugs and you name it, and basically never had a chance in any way whatsoever. I'm sure the jury's probably made up their mind one way or the other. Another 44 witnesses aren't going to do it. And in a case in rebuttal, how many witnesses could you possibly have as the prosecution to come in and say, oh, we're going to do that? Anyway, let's move along here. Anyway, it's like one of those things, just practice of law. Listen, you better have some thick skin, whether you're going to be a prosecutor, defense attorney, or a judge. And, to write a 22-page motion to disqualify probably certainly is good for the record, probably felt really good venting, but it's probably time you could have probably spent on other things like preparing your closing statement. You made your record, filed the motion, I guess, but do you really think the judge is going to recuse herself when we're this close to being done in a death penalty case where we have to start all over again? Just don't see that happening for sure. It's a crazy world out there. I don't know. It's just one of the things you got to have thick skin and you move along and you do what you do. I also had a story the other day about this prosecutor. The Kentucky Supreme Court suspended a prosecutor by the name of Ronnie Goldie from practicing law after it was discovered that he promised favors in court to a defendant in exchange for nude photos. Wow. I mean, really, Mr. Prosecutor, man? Really? You think that's appropriate to do? Anyway, the Supreme Court found that Mr. Goldie is a danger to the public and clients, though it noted it cannot remove the Commonwealth's attorney. Needless to say, because he's an elected official, the state may only be removed via impeachment. So we'll have to wait and see. But apparently, Mr. Goldie had exchanged 230 Facebook messages with a defendant, promising favors in return for the photos. Now, he testified at his September 9th hearing that he didn't recall any of those messages, though he didn't deny sending them either. So either he's, maybe a little, who really? I would think that's the kind of thing where you just go and hand him your bar card. That's just weird, creepy. Why would he just do that? I just don't get that. But it just shows you it can happen anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. As the victim, who the defendant was in this particular case, when he asked for nude photos, basically, like, well, did he specifically ask for it? Well, do you think he was asking for photos of my dog? Yeah, he abused the public trust. You can't do that, which is another good reason why you should always have witnesses in the room. And you certainly shouldn't be, what's the word I'm looking for? You shouldn't be communicating with pro se defendants. It should all be formal on letterhead, not via Facebook Messenger. Hey, and saying, why don't you send me some pics? Weird, creepy, and he's in charge. What was he thinking? Get him out of there. All right. Now, this is the other one I want to talk about. Okay. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this axe wielding guy menacing customers at this McDonald's store. Now, there's a little bit of controversy. Not controversy. Let's just say disagreement of facts regarding whether he was upset by a woman who was refusing his advances, or if there's some dispute over food. But take a look at this. Does it really, really matter? I don't think so. Yeah. So a hatchet going around menacing people. Are you kidding me? But instead of worrying about, was it somebody that was upset regarding his food, or whether he was upset with the woman not giving his advance, it's a little odd to me. Guess what? After he fled and was found by police with a hatchet in his backpack, he's been released with no bail. That's the best way to say it. No bail. Okay, and I get it. I'm telling you, I'm a criminal defense attorney. My clients love the fact that basically everybody gets personal recognizance bonds. There's no more cash bail. But I'm telling you, as a member of the community, be afraid, okay? So Michael Palacios, that's his name. And like I said, no bail after menacing at least 3 people in the McDonald's on tape with a hatchet, brandishing a weapon. So criminal mischief and menacing charges, and no bail. He even bragged about it on his Instagram page. He was bragging that he was fleeing from the police, that it was lots of fun. But then traffic got really busy and they couldn't get out of there. And then he fell, all that kind of good stuff. I think the moral of this story is be afraid. Okay. Be afraid. Why would there be no bail? Okay. Just think about it. We put no bond holds on people if they're usually involved in a domestic violence case. You don't just get a bond. You have to wait in custody to see a judge. Why? Because you have a cooling off period. A man menaces people with a hatchet. Now, thank goodness, I agree. He did not do anything, and maybe there's a completely plausible explanation that we just don't know about. But I think using common sense and good judgment, one could probably say that's probably not the kind of person that we want wielding hatchets. If he has that poor control of impulse control, so to speak, I'm just very surprised. And what if he had done something? What if he'd whacked somebody on the head or struck down with his hatchet? Are you serious? So yeah, it's I don't know. Just be afraid, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, as a member of the community, it's great as a criminal defense attorney. As a member of the community, I'm starting to get a little concerned that some of the people maybe need a little cooling off period. Bottom line. What can you do? And let's see, moving on here. We got a more stack of stuff here. Oh yeah, this guy. Let's talk about our dumb criminal for the last couple of days, and then we'll talk about some Lori Vallow stuff as well as some other things. First, take a look at this guy, David Schnellenberger, facing DUI charges after he allegedly gave a Florida Highway Patrol trooper his JetBlue MasterCard when he asked for his license. Apparently, the car had just crashed into the median on I-95, and Mr. Schnellenberger, a little bit intoxicated, could not distinguish between his license and his JetBlue MasterCard. Not that we condone drinking and driving. We don't. In fact, we tell people Uber. There should almost be no DUIs in today's world with Uber. And so if you get one, Mr. Schnellenberger, you're dumb. And the more important thing is if you're going to drink and drive, have all that information handy, okay? So that maybe if you're not, maybe you're a functioning alcoholic or something, they're not going to notice or smell that odor of unknown alcoholic beverage, okay? So Mr. Schnellenberger, congratulations. Not only did you get a DUI, not only did your own words and actions get noted in the police report that you were drunk and handed that card, now you've been crowned the dumb criminal of the day by Crime Talk. Congratulations. You've made it. Life is complete. Okay. We should probably start a countdown clock or a watch, but we just don't know when the judge is going to issue an order in the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell matter. All right. As many of you all know, there was a hearing last week. A hearing set rather quickly, which I think is somewhat odd since Lori Hellis, who files motions to have access to sealed motions and have the court explain why they should be sealed, those matters don't get set for the docket until mid-October. But the defense attorneys for Lori Vallow file a motion saying there should be no further recordings of this case, and we don't want the trial to be recorded. That motions hearing gets set promptly. We brought it to you. You can watch it. And the judge just kind of sat behind his monitors. It's very, very weird. Guess he's a little camera shy. The prosecution in this case says we don't want cameras either. Wow. I would think you have a woman and a man who are accused of killing Lori Vallow's 2 children and Chad Daybell's wife for profit, money, insurance funds. That's what's alleged in the indictment, in essence. You would think the prosecution and even the courts would say, you know what, this is a case of great interest. We should televise this. One, to show off our judicial system, to show that the system works, that it's fair, it's impartial. We'll get a fair trial for these 2 defendants. And at the end of it, justice will be served. You think that they would want that. The prosecution said, we don't want this to be televised in any way. And I just think, why not? Now, what's the word I'm looking for? This case, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case, I think it should be a pretty simple case for the prosecution to present their evidence, get a conviction as it relates to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. The defense has a lot of stuff to work with. It's going to be an interesting trial. Her attorneys seem very smart, very competent, and I think they're going to do a fine job. Mr. Pryor, I think he's going to do a fine job for his attorney, for his client, Chad Daybell. And I think at the end of the day, I'm just making a prediction that I think that they'll be found guilty. I still give them the presumption of innocence, but I think based upon the evidence that we've seen and that we know about thus far, they will more than likely be convicted. Why would the state not want the world to see the judicial system in action? so to speak. But then again, you have to think, oh my God, here we are 3 years since JJ and Tylee have disappeared, only to be found deceased on Chad Daybell's property. And it just doesn't seem like we're that much closer to trial. I mean, I know it's just right around the corner in January of this year, but does anybody really get the feeling that we're gonna start trial in, let's see, we're almost done with September. So we got October, November, December, 3 months away, 90 days basically. And then a couple of weeks in the first of the year with the holidays and everything going on in there. Lori Vallow has spent the previous, 10 months at the state hospital being restored to competency. Her attorneys are saying, I need more time, but she wants to, doesn't want to waive speedy trial, but she wants to trial with her husband, Chad, and Chad doesn't want to have a joint trial. So I guess my thinking is and tell me if I'm wrong, but does anybody really think that this trial is really going to start by that day? I mean, I hope it does. I really hope it does, but I'm just getting a little skeptical here. Normally, in a death penalty case, there are lots and lots of motions that are filed, attacking the death penalty system, lots of due process, lots of constitutional arguments that are raised, etc. I mean, maybe they've been filed. We just don't have access to any of them. It seems to be kind of a hodgepodge of motions hearings that are whenever convenient for the court, unless it's inconvenient, like Lori Hellis's motions. And so I guess I'm just not getting that warm, fuzzy feeling like this thing is actually going to go. But here's my prediction. I think the judge in this case, Judge Boyce, and maybe someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think has ruled in favor of the prosecution on just about every issue. Okay. Now you may say, Scott, well, that's just because the prosecution's right on everything that they do all the time. And some things that we've seen, I've said the prosecution's been right, particularly early on, the whole issues that revolved around the trying to disqualify the prosecutors. There was a whole issue about tampering with witnesses. And I remember listening to that thinking, if you think that's tampering, I don't know what jurisdiction you're coming from. That was a pretty chill conversation. Not offended in any way whatsoever. And I think the judge and the ethics people made the correct decision when they had those rulings. But since then, it's been pretty quiet. And the prosecution's pretty much got every ruling that they ever wanted. And you may say, well, Scott, that's just because he's such a wise and brilliant judge. And he's just making the correct rulings under the law. I mean, I think the defense has made some good arguments. Was it going to work? I don't know. But I think the judge was a little bit dismissive of the one that the defense filed, in particular as it relates to basically the separate charges that potentially the defense argues need to be laid out in separate charges and not lumped together as one. But, that's just the way it is. But do I think the Judge Boyce, is going to allow cameras in the courtroom, particularly in light of the fact that the defense doesn't want them there and the prosecution, who's not been able to agree with just about anything with the defense the entire time, other than allowing Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell to dress out in civilian clothes for court appearances to hopefully humanize them? So do I think the judge is going to allow cameras in the courtroom? I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I am wrong. But I really believe Judge Boyce is going to find a way and say that just like he has sealed everything in this case, that he is balancing interests of justice and a fair trial to both the prosecution and the defense, and that we believe that this will make a bigger circus out of it, and cameras will not be allowed, even though there's nothing to indicate that the people that had the camera set up per the court order did anything in any way to violate that court order. So, you know, but do you really want to be known as the judge that limited free speech, freedom of the press? Do you really want to be that judge? I just can't imagine Judge Boyce is like, I want to be the judge. See, that's what I don't get. That's why I can't do it. I swear to God, this has always been, people say, how do you be a defense attorney, right? Like, it's easy. I get up and I get to defend the Constitution on a daily basis, right? I say, government, you can't do this. You're exceeding your authority under the Constitution. Tell me who in government gets up and says, I think today we should give a little more freedom back to the people. I can't think of many, okay? And it's certainly not your local prosecutor. It's certainly not the local politician in any way, right? It could be a bad search, but they're like, hey, their motion's only as good as the judges it's in front of, and this judge loves cops, and even though this cop has a bad reputation, he's still a cop. We'll take our chances. And you can go back and look at the earliest videos we've ever done, right? You want to stop police misconduct. You want to stop the creep of it's okay, to the point where people get upset and, next thing you know, they're out rioting, which we certainly do not condone in any way whatsoever. But you get bad cops making bad stops, being protected by the prosecutors who aren't saying this is a bad stop. You got judges that say, well, as a cop, I don't want them to think that I'm an anti-cop judge, so we'll rule in their favor, right? Just call the chips where they may, okay? Some of the best things I've ever learned is when I got my butt kicked in court. Like, ooh, won't make that mistake again, right? Just like the cop. Make that mistake, they learn from it. They're not going to do it again. But if you allow them to get away with it, then they think they can get away with it. And then it just kind of creeps a little bit more and a little bit more. So nobody ever gets up in the government and says, I think today the people need a little more freedom. That's right. And sometimes judges aren't that way either. Judge Boyce, you can tell he doesn't like the media, but he kind of feels compelled to do it. He, what seems like begrudgingly signs the motions for cameras in the courtroom, which I think he should continue to do. But I think he's going to say, ooh, neither the defense is going to interfere with their right to a fair trial. I'd say hogwash. The burden should be on the people that don't want the cameras in the courtroom to establish what prejudice there is. What? It looks bad for Lori Vallow? Are you serious? She's charged an indictment with killing her kids, her new husband's wife. Oh, and not to mention, like, she's got that thing in Arizona where her brother allegedly conspired with her to kill him too. I'm not sure how much worse she could possibly look. Like, let's get for real. Only thing cameras could do is probably help her just a little bit. But we'll just have to wait and see. So my prediction is, and I hope that I'm absolutely wrong. That I think Judge Boyce is going to come up with an excuse, a reason to not allow cameras in the courtroom. And that would be a great disappointment, because then we're going to have to figure out a way. Like Frank, the hardest working man in show business, which is going to be difficult because I know I have a trial, I think the second week in January, it's already set. And all when this starts, or it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. So I hope I'm wrong. I really, really do hope that I am wrong, but let me know in the comments whether you think Lori Vallow is going to, if we're going to get to see her trial televised. I think it'd be super, super interesting, particularly when there's already all kinds of theories out there that the court is trying to protect Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell because they're members of the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. and that somehow the church is covering for them. Because I've heard those theories, but I haven't seen any proof of that. And my kind of guess is generally what I've seen is that the Mormon church doesn't really go along with a lot of these fringe kook things that have begun, so to speak. And I just don't think that it's that they're supporting that in any way. I think I just haven't seen any proof of it. But if somebody's got some proof, let me know. Like I said, we tried to be intellectually honest here. If this is my opinion based upon the facts that we have, just like all people do or should do in real life, if you're going to be intellectually honest, is you're going to say, oh, new information, we're going to change. Somehow, some people, when they pick a side, it doesn't matter what the information is, the side they've picked is right or wrong. But that's usually not the case. Not everybody's right all the time, right? Just like judges aren't. They get reversed as well. So they don't always get it right. And I just think I hope first, couple of hopes. One, that the Judge Boyce does not deny cameras in the courtroom. He should allow it. But if he does, I hope all of those news organizations appeal to the Idaho Supreme Court, do the equivalent of some sort of Rule 21 or interlocutory appeal, and say, hey, this is a matter of great importance. It needs to be resolved. Hey, I'm sorry I don't like the cameras, but welcome to 2022. Okay. We got cameras everywhere in the world. I just don't understand what the prosecution doesn't want to be on TV. I mean, this is their big case. You think they want to, rally around the flag, wrap themselves in the flag. Only thing we're giving Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell is a free trial. Wrap myself in the flag. I'm a prosecutor protecting justice, people of the state of Idaho. And, little apple pie thrown in there as well. Who wouldn't want that? Let the world see the justice system work. Let's see that, hey, we should have no concerns about a smaller prosecuting office that's never done a death penalty case to be able to handle one of the biggest cases in the nation, if not the world, as of this particular time. And they've had 3 years to do it. Okay. What was the case? They stopped the feed because all the witnesses didn't choose to consent to be televised. You're on the freaking witness stand, and yet you can choose not to be televised. So the feed is useless. You just get a black box. God, why can't I think of the name? It's the Ronan trial or Pike County murders in was it Indiana or Iowa or something like that. They've had 5 years for that. 5 years, 6 years almost, I guess. 5 years from when it happened. And the prosecutor, 6 years to prepare an opening statement. One of the worst opening statements I think most people would say they've ever seen, particularly if you've had 6 years, right? The opening statement is a quick roadmap of what you're going to see. Oh my gosh, I wanted to stick a hot fork in my eye. It was so bad. And the word that she used so many times, like she should have taken some sort of NITA course where you actually get to see yourself at the podium arguing and getting to listen to yourself to see how you sound. And if you have a lot of you do that. I remember once I took this NITA course years ago. I think it's National Institute of Trial Advocacy, but they tape you making like a closing or an opening statement. And I remember it was a security blanket for me, but I had a pen, and I found out I for whatever reason, no matter where I was, I would grab my pen and I would hold it in my hand, but it became a distraction. So I literally focused on not using my pen. Hopefully it helped. But we can always do better, and I get it. Maybe the prosecutor thought in that particular case that she knew her facts so well that she could just rattle them off. Clearly not the case. Even if I know my facts, everything so well, I still like to have a little notepad of a couple bullet points that I know I want to make just in case I forget it. It doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. Always gives you that roadmap in which to go back. So anyway, man, we've had so much stuff to talk about here in the last couple of days, but we have to do something. We have to pay the bills, right? Since obviously Scott's not working by making videos because he's too busy doing that, we got to come up with a way to make sure we do that. So we have one of our sponsors back, crimetalkprep.com. All right. We've talked about this. If somebody had told me, 3 years ago that the country would shut down, I literally would have laughed in their face, right? If somebody told me we would have shortages, supply chain shortages, food shortages, fertilizer shortages, that they're not getting enough crops around the world, that there'd be a war in Ukraine, who would have said, oh yeah, that's going to happen? Well, you have to be ready for the harsh realities of the world, whether you like it or not. And, we've got the Russians over there sending missiles towards nuclear facilities, controlled by a guy who doesn't want to lose. Just makes you think, what could possibly go wrong? Well, in today's world, just about anything. So if you go to crimetalkprep.com, you can order these food preparations that you need. If there are, in fact, every food shortages, hopefully you'll never need that. But when you go to crimetalkprep.com, you're able to save 20% on a 3-month food supply kit. It's good stuff. We've obviously, when we became a partner with them, they sent us a bunch of food stuffs. I took it home and I tried it. It was actually not bad. And if you've ever really been hungry before, like, you're dieting or something, remember how that feeling, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. Try being hungry if there's no food to eat. If things got ugly really fast, because hey, like I said, what could possibly go wrong in today's world? So go to crimetalkprep.com, be prepared. Hopefully you never need it, but like all things, when it comes to emergencies, you want it there, hoping you never need it, but glad it's there when you do. So go do that. No, Monica, not bad. It doesn't mean good. It's really good. I mean, it's food that you can store for up to 25 years. All right. We're not talking farm to table. Let's get real. We're talking about food that you need to be able to open up and eat if you just need a little bit of water to get that going. And, bottom line, it's not bad. And I've eaten a lot of meals ready to eat over the years, long time ago when I was in the military. These are much better than the MREs, I assure you. So what could possibly go wrong? That's for sure. Let's see here. I got this. This is interesting. Squeaky Wheel says the most extraordinary thing about the Daybell trial is that Lori and Chad will be sitting in a courtroom looking at the interactions with each other over every single day. Boyce plans on hiding that. Well, the defense wants to hide that. Remember in their motion, they said the cameras are focused at our client and they're catching her smirking, and we don't like it because it's done nothing except, focus on our client and her reactions or talking to her attorneys and yada, yada, yada. Okay. First of all, that's the attorney's job to prepare her client, knowing that there's cameras in the courtroom. And even if there weren't cameras in the courtroom, you would still prepare the client and how to react and present themselves in court. So if you don't like what your client's doing, talk to your client. And second, maybe you need to look and say, did I not prepare her well enough for trial, for being in front of the camera, right? Stop the smirking, the rolling the eyes, all those types of things, right? And guess what? When the evidence is coming out and they're going to be showing pictures of the deceased remains and putting them up on a big Elmo so the entire courtroom can see the remains of JG and Ty Lee, some of which have been burned. You think a jury isn't going to be looking over at her reaction to seeing her charred children? that are now deceased, I think everybody would be looking to see what her reaction is. So my humble opinion would be, get over it, defense guys. Like, I get it. I've been there, but get over it. Okay. Get over it. So we'll see. I just, good question. Good question there, Squeaky Wheel. Yeah, the judge, I think, wants to hide. I think the judge hopes that this whole case would just go away. I think that's what the judge ultimately wants. But yeah. And Ms. Johnson writes, if you're hungry, it's good. If you're hungry enough, you've seen those things where, like, what is it, the shows where they eat like bugs and stuff? Like, was it Fear Factor or something years ago? They weren't even hungry and they ate this stuff. You get hungry enough, you'll eat anything. Oh, what's the one? Naked and Afraid, where they drop them out in the desert or the jungle somewhere and they haven't eaten but, little not even rodents, but like bugs in the last because they can't get enough protein. Now, granted, you're not voluntarily dropping yourself out in the desert or the jungle, but if something else bad happens, you just never know. The people down in Puerto Rico right now, right? Completely knocked out with power yet again after they still trying to recover from the last hurricane of 5 years ago. Do you think some of them said, man, I wish I should have gone to crimetalkprep.com and stocked up? Hate to say I told you so, but anyway, I think you should.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Yeah, see, and don't get me wrong. It drives me crazy when I see these speakers or representatives for the White House get up in there and they're and Don't they take public speaking courses? Psaki was bad, but Corinne JP is worse. And don't get me wrong. It's everybody takes pauses. Some people use different words. Some people say, but yes, the more you speak, the more hopefully you become aware of what you're saying and how you're saying it, and you get better at it. And you would think if somebody's going to be a spokesperson that they could get up there and say a couple of words without having to have pauses where they have to say, Listen, we've all been there. We've all been at that moment. We're trying to struggle for a word. So I'm not going to throw stones in regards to that. But when it's not like someone's asking you a off the cuff question that you really weren't expecting. A prosecutor that we were talking about in the Pike County murders is that she's had 6 years to prepare for this thing. And nobody said, wow, that's good. Or maybe she didn't practice it once or twice. I'm just really surprised. Just really, really surprised. Anyway. All right, let's see. We've got a couple more questions here. Let's see here. Crime Talk. Why do they, I'm assuming the police, sometimes say on shows that murder crime is past the date to do anything? I thought there wasn't a timeline for catching a murder so long as the person was alive. See, I said, the statute of limitations for most murders, particularly murder after deliberation, is that there is no statute of limitations. If it's a lesser reduced offense, then yes, there's a statute of limitations. But my experience is when I see somebody say there's really not much anybody can do, is that it's a cold case. They can't recover DNA, and more than likely, any suspect will more than likely have passed away. Yeah. And yes, Cheryl, see, this is what I love about our audience. They're so smart. Not just burned, dismembered and burned. Okay. And why would that be relevant? Her reaction in court. Well, it kind of goes to see whether she would have just a callous heart as it relates to her children, right? Listen, I'm telling you, all a prosecutor has to get up and say is, ladies and gentlemen, this woman adopted JJ, had Ty Lee. We know she knows what to do as a mother because she was able to, her other son, Colby, he's, grown up what appears to be a responsible human being, but she completely failed these two. And I remember as a judge saying years ago on a child abuse resulting in death case that I was handling, and we were at sentencing, and the judge said, listen, throughout nature, there's one thing that moms will do, and that is protect their young. And the judge or anybody could say, Lori Vallow failed at that, right? She had one job as mom, protecting her young, and she didn't do it. Now, maybe she was crazy. I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. Remember, they don't have NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity, in Idaho, but it goes to your mental state. If you're crazy at the time, how can you possibly say that you could form the requisite mental intent to do that? Going to be interesting in that regard. Why shouldn't the world be allowed to see this? Bottom line. All right. Well, it looks like our time has come. It goes by so fast. Anyway, want to thank everybody for joining us. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do. Leave me a comment below. Hit that little bell so you receive notifications when we go live or put up new content. And if you'd like to continue the conversation where you can actually call in and speak with us and we'll answer any of your questions, you can become a Patreon member, and it's super inexpensive, and you get all kinds of cool stuff that can help explain what you're watching on those trials that you watch on TV or YouTube throughout the week. You will be an expert when it comes to evidence if you sign up as a Patreon member. So I want to thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk, and all our Patrons will be there in just a few minutes.